Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and I just finished watching Peaky Blinders Season 6. And I have a lot of conflicting thoughts when it comes to the season and really this series as a whole. I really do enjoy it and love the historical part of it, the gangster lifestyle, and that's why I kind of like the first half of the series more than the second half when it was more when they were staying in Birmingham, when they were just small time gangsters. The more Tommy got into politics, the more I found myself getting more conflicted on the series as a whole. And the politics makes sense, they were written well, it was done from a very good perspective that made sense for all the characters involved, and I have no problems with the inclusion of that type of politics, and it was more political intrigue and like manipulation, Game of Thrones style, more than current day politics, so I don't have a problem with it from that sense. It's just not what the series was originally marketed to be, the more gangster. He's not really much of a gangster anymore. I was not initially okay with that evolution, but I kind of got used to it. It kind of makes sense for how everything went. But this series goes more into that direction than the previous one, so there was that conflict as well, and I'm just not sure I was 100% okay with it. And a lot of the side characters and side stories weren't as developed as in previous seasons. This season was very much a character study of Tommy, especially since the last season ended with him wanting to commit suicide, a gun to his head. This whole season was always going to be him dealing with that moment. The whole season was how does he frame that moment in the context of his life, and it's very well done. His character study is great, and there's a lot of great things about it that I enjoy, especially Tom Hardy as Alfie. He's always top tier, even though he was barely in the season, but he was still great when he was in it. I will be getting to spoilers briefly, so spoiler alert. Now, the season, yeah, a lot less happened in it per se, and I'm not okay with the time jumps always. I feel like we miss a lot of stuff when it comes to time jumps in the series, and it's done it several times. This one, I think I had the most problem with, but I kind of got over it in the end. I was very disappointed that the other characters weren't developed to the same degree as Tommy. Arthur probably got the most development besides Tommy, and his was good. I prefer the brawler, violent Arthur to the drug addicted one, but it was an interesting arc to show him recovering, drug addict, and it was well done. It was very well done and tracked with his previous character arc. So enjoyed that to a certain extent. And the villains, the four villains, there were about four groups of villains throughout this season, and I was very initially concerned when the final episode was coming because Tommy had only dealt with about half of them by the end, and by the time he gave up, and I was, what the fuck is going on? This is the last season. The series is over. How are they gonna leave it with the two other villains just ignored, and they just kind of disappeared from the plot? And then the final 5 minutes happened, and I realized how it was gonna go. So no concerns there. For those of you who don't know, apparently there's going to be a Peaky Blinders movie to wrap things up, and that's why it's still a cliffhanger end of the season. Apparently that has something to do with the death of Aunt Polly, the actress playing Aunt Polly. Originally, the series was going to be 7 seasons, but with her death and COVID delaying them a year, they decided to try to get as much done in season 6 possible, then wrap it up in a movie. I'm fine with that. I just was really expecting it to be wrapped up. I didn't realize there was a movie coming until after I'd finished watching the season. So just kind of go into it aware of that if you haven't heard that news already. But I really like Tommy's arc. That is the key in this season. It is a character study of him more than anything else. Him versus Michael. And I think it's very well done. Michael has had an incredible arc over the course of the last few seasons, and his guilt over the loss of his aunt being misplaced onto Tommy makes him out for revenge. And it all tracks. It all makes sense. It sucks that he was in prison for most of the season and really didn't have a lot of screen time, but I did like that arc. But Tommy, yes, Tommy is at the heart of it. And Tommy is a very interesting character because he's not driven by anything necessarily. He's not a greedy individual. He's kind of driven by politics to be a good person and like to help the working class in these later seasons, but it's not really that. It's his ambition. It's his ambition that really drives him, but not ambition for any sort of gain or development or anything like that. It's ambition for the sake of ambition, because if he feels like he stops and becomes stagnant, he has to face his own reality, face the problems, his PTSD, and really have a look at himself. And the disease that he believes he's diagnosed with in the middle of the series forces him to reevaluate himself, what he'd been holding off. His ambition had been holding off a journey of self-discovery, and that's why he was so ambitious, not because he actually wanted anything, because he had all the power he could ever want. He had all the money he could ever want several seasons ago, and he had come so far from the local gangster from Birmingham in the first season. And it was kind of an interesting arc where ambition servicing no other purpose but to distract yourself. And I think that's a very interesting way of putting it. And I think if this had been the final season and he had taken out all the bad guys and he did die like he thought he was going to from the disease, that would have been a good ending for his character, because he could never die in a blaze of glory. It was never going to be part of his character. And I think that having him going out by a disease like that, given to him by his daughter, one of the only things that kept him grounded in this reality. And after her death, he slipped farther and further into madness. That I think it was kind of an interesting way of doing that. His love for his daughter, the one time that he got out of his shell, besides Annabeth Wallace's character from the first couple seasons, besides her, his daughter's the only really person that he cares about to a degree to make himself vulnerable. And that's vulnerability is what got him killed. At least he believed it was for a certain extent of the season. And that was an interesting arc, and I was really impressed by how they were doing it. In the end, I'm okay that they didn't follow through with that arc and that ending to the character, because they hadn't wrapped up the whole fascists in Germany dilemma that they'd been building up to for the last couple of years. And I do have some conflicts when it comes to that character arc. I mean, they do portray the fascists in a very interesting way. They're not just generically evil, but they're complex. They're developed villains. They're not just like, I'm evil for being evil. It's like, I'm evil because of these reasons. And you really understand them if you understand what I'm trying to say is they're complicated villains. Sam Cartliff, I think, is the actor's name. They do a good way of developing, so I'm okay with that. When it was originally introduced that these people were fascists, I'm like, oh, this is going to go down a rabbit hole where they're just going to be generically evil, and it's going to generically make Tommy a good guy. But Tommy is still not a good guy, even though he's fighting these fascists. And it's a really cool way of balancing the historical turmoil of the era. And it's all historically relevant, at least from my perspective. I don't know a whole lot about that specific era in history, but it seems relevant enough. And I think it's done with incredible tact, incredible talent, and the writing for this entire season was incredible. The dialogue. I miss shows that had what appears to be throwaway dialogue that ends up being vital to your understanding of everything that's going on. And there's just some really good pieces of dialogue that really sell this as one of the best written shows of the last few years, and why it's so popular is the dialogue. Everyone can point to scenes in dialogue that make this show great, and that is continued in this season. So if you're a fan of Peaky Blinders, this may be a bit of a conflicting season for you. If you like the last couple seasons, you'll like this one. If you wish that it still kept to its roots in the first 3 seasons, you might have a bit of an issue with this season. I'm kind of in the camp of I like the first 3 seasons better than the last 3, but it's still a lot of great character work, a lot of great writing, and I was overall very impressed with the season as a whole and the character work, and look forward to the movie and want to see how all this ends. So I have to give this season, with all that in consideration, probably a 7 out of 10, probably 6.5, and that's good for me. That's a good score for me. I rate things different than other people. But yeah, 6.5 to a 7. I'm happy giving it to that. The dialogue really carries it, and Tommy's arc kind of makes up for everyone else not really having an arc per se. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.